The store's radio played a commercial advertising this store, but with a different clerk's voice. The first time I heard it, I was scrubbing dried coffee from the self-serve machine. It was 2:11 a.m. The store was empty. Not unusually empty. Overnight shifts always felt detached from the rest of the world. Hours passed without customers. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Refrigerators hummed along the back wall. The smell of lemon cleaner mixed with stale coffee and warm electronics. The radio played a classic rock station. I knew every advertisement, every jingle, every break. The music faded. Static crackled through the ceiling speakers. I barely noticed at first. Then I realized the static sounded wrong. Instead of random noise, it rose and fell rhythmically, like breathing. A slow inhale, a slow exhale. The sound lasted only a few seconds before a cheerful guitar riff replaced it. Looking for snacks, drinks, and fresh coffee? A bright female announcer spoke. Stop by Maple Street Market. I continued cleaning. Then another voice joined the commercial. Hi, I'm the night clerk. My hands stopped moving. The voice wasn't mine. It belonged to a man around my age. Friendly, relaxed, completely unfamiliar. The commercial sounded professionally produced. We keep the coffee hot. The clerk laughed softly. We keep the shelves stocked. The announcer returned. Open 24 hours a day. Then the clerk added one final line. Tell him I said hello. The commercial ended. The music didn't resume immediately. For 5 seconds, the speakers emitted absolutely nothing. No hiss, no hum, nothing. Then normal programming returned. I frowned and went back to work. 40 minutes later, the commercial played again. Same music, same announcer, different script. Maple Street Market, the announcer said brightly. Open when everyone else is asleep. The unfamiliar clerk spoke. I've worked here a long time. That line definitely hadn't been there before. I know where Daniel keeps the emergency key. My stomach tightened. Daniel was the manager. The emergency key was hidden behind a fake electrical panel near the stockroom. Most employees didn't know that. The clerk continued. I know which freezer door sticks. I glanced toward the coolers. One of them occasionally caught on the frame. I know the night clerk drinks coffee with 2 creamers. I stared upward. Nobody knew that. The commercial ended. Again the silence followed. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The refrigerators hummed. The smell of old coffee suddenly seemed stronger. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Still, when the commercial played again, I listened carefully. At 3:03 a.m., the static returned. Breathing, slow, patient. Then the jingle began. Only now something sounded off. The melody wavered slightly, as though the recording were stretching. Maple Street Market, the announcer sang. The notes bent downward. The unfamiliar clerk interrupted. You missed a spot beneath the microwave yesterday. A chill crawled up my spine. Nobody had seen me cleaning yesterday. You looked tired. The voice sounded almost sympathetic. You stayed awake until 3 in the afternoon before coming to work. My pulse quickened. That was true. No one knew it. I remember when you started here. Pause followed. The music skipped backward. Several notes replayed. The clerk corrected himself. No. Another pause. I remember when I started here. The commercial ended. This time the silence lasted nearly 10 seconds. Long enough for me to become aware of every sound in the building. The compressors, the ventilation system, my breathing. When the music finally returned, relief washed through me. It didn't last. Around 3:40 I started noticing reflections. The freezer doors reflected long bright stretches of the store. Normally I ignored them. That night they seemed impossible to avoid. Sometimes I thought I saw movement beside my reflection. Whenever I focused, nothing was there. At 3:42 the commercial returned. It began mid-sentence. If you see someone in the reflections, don't wave. I froze. The announcer continued cheerfully. Fresh coffee, cold drinks, friendly service. The unfamiliar clerk interrupted. "He won't recognize you yet." The music continued. "He usually notices around for." The commercial ended. 12 seconds of silence followed. During those 12 seconds, I realized something unsettling. The breathing wasn't only coming from the radio. The store itself seemed to breathe. The refrigerators exhaled. The vents inhaled. The sensation vanished when the music returned. No customers came. That bothered me more than the commercials. There was always someone. A truck driver. College student. Anybody. Yet the parking lot remained empty. At exactly 4 a.m., the commercial played again. No music. No announcer. Only the unfamiliar clerk. "Still listening?" The voice sounded closer. Not louder. Closer. Like someone standing nearby. I walked behind the counter and looked at the radio receiver. The station display was blank. No frequency. No numbers. Nothing. The voice continued. "I knew you would be." I turned the volume knob down. Nothing changed. I unplugged the radio. The commercial continued. My hands started shaking. The clerk laughed quietly. Every time the commercial ended, normal music returned. I plugged the radio back in. The display flickered. For an instant, words appeared. "Now hiring." Then they vanished. The next commercial arrived only minutes later. Maple Street Market. The announcer sounded nervous now. The clerk interrupted immediately. He found the notebook faster this time. I frowned. "Notebook? Check beneath Register 2. The ad ended. I walked to Register 2. A blue notebook rested beneath the counter. Dust coated the cover. I had never seen it before. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. The handwriting looked exactly like mine. Page after page described overnight shifts. Commercials. Static. Reflections. The earliest entry was dated more than 2 years ago. The latest was dated yesterday. I had worked here only 8 months. The final entry ended mid-sentence. It read, "He's starting to sound more like me then." Nothing followed. The radio crackled. No music. Only breathing. Found it. I shut the notebook. "You always do." The voice sounded amused. The lights flickered overhead. Short pulses. Blinking. "You left it for yourself." A pause. "Or I did." The ad ended. The commercials began arriving every few minutes. Each version changed. Each version revealed something new. "Don't check camera 3. Keep the coffee fresh. Don't answer the phone. Don't look directly at the freezer reflections." The voice seemed to be updating itself in real time, responding to my thoughts. At 4:31, the fluorescent lights dimmed briefly. Every reflection darkened, then brightened again. For just an instant, my reflection remained dark, a fraction of a second longer than everything else. I stepped backward. The reflection didn't. Then it did. At 4:37, another commercial played. Only my own voice, perfectly mine. "Shift change in 20 minutes." I nearly dropped the notebook. The voice continued. "Thank you for covering." The commercial ended. The next one came 2 minutes later. "Shift change in 18 minutes." Then 16. Then 14. Each announcement used my voice. Not the stranger's. Mine. The realization terrified me more than anything else had. At 4:46, I ignored every warning and checked the security monitor. 8 camera feeds appeared. Every aisle. Every corner. Every entrance. Camera 3 showed the register. A clerk stood behind it. My uniform. My face. My posture. The timestamp on that feed was 11 minutes ahead of the others. The duplicate clerk stared directly into the camera. Directly at me. The radio erupted with breathing. Then my voice spoke. "Almost done." The duplicate clerk smiled. I didn't. The feed cut to static. When it returned, the counter was empty. Morning light slowly seeped through the windows. The commercials stopped. The music returned. Weather reports. Traffic updates. Normal programming. The store felt ordinary again. I waited for the day clerk to arrive. At 4:58 the phone rang. I answered. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then my own voice said, "Did the commercials start changing sooner this time?" I couldn't answer. The voice sounded exhausted, afraid, exactly how I felt. "Listen carefully," it said. "You think you're the replacement." Pause followed. Static breathed softly through the line. "You're not." My throat tightened. "What?" The voice laughed once. Not happily, just sadly. "That's why the other clerk never sounded like you." The line crackled. "You haven't met him yet." The call ended. The phone display flickered. For less than a second, a message appeared. "Current night clerk. Pending identification." Then it vanished. A moment later the front door chimed. The day clerk walked inside. He smiled politely. "Morning." I stared at him. Something felt wrong immediately. Not his face. Not his uniform. His voice. I had heard it before. Hundreds of times. Through commercials. Through static. Through breathing speakers. The day clerk tilted his head. "Everything okay?" Behind him the radio crackled. And somewhere beneath the music, hidden inside the static, I heard my own voice whisper, "There he is." The store always felt detached from time. Maybe all convenience stores do after midnight. The windows turned into black mirrors. The fluorescent lights flattened everything beneath them into the same pale brightness. Refrigerators hummed in long, steady notes. The air carried the mixed smell of floor cleaner, stale coffee, cardboard, and cold air leaking from freezer doors. I worked the night shift 5 days a week. By 3 in the morning, the world outside usually felt hypothetical. The clock above the cigarette display read 3:17 a.m. Then it read 3:19. I frowned. For a moment I thought I'd missed a minute while stocking gum near the register. But I could have sworn I had looked up only seconds earlier. The second hand jerked forward. Tick, tick, tick. Normal again. I shrugged it off. The radio behind the counter crackled softly through a late-night talk show. A host was discussing weather forecasts and local traffic reports for roads that were currently empty. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the glass. Then the automatic doors slid open. A man walked in carrying a shopping basket filled with items from tomorrow. I didn't realize that immediately. At first glance, he looked ordinary enough. Mid-40s, dark jacket, neatly combed hair, calm expression. What caught my attention was the fact that he already had a basket. Customers usually grabbed one from inside. He carried his through the doors as though he'd brought it from somewhere else. The basket was nearly full. He nodded politely as he entered. "Evening." "Morning, technically," I said. He smiled. "I suppose that's true." He walked deeper into the store. I looked down at my magazine rack. Then looked again. Something felt wrong. Couldn't place it. A few minutes later, he approached the register. I finally saw what was inside the basket. A newspaper sat on top. Tomorrow's newspaper. The date printed across the front was June 16th. Tomorrow. I stared. The headline mentioned a subway delay that hadn't happened yet. Beneath the newspaper sat a carton of milk. Expiration date, June 23rd. Packaged, June 16th. Tomorrow again. My stomach tightened. I picked up the carton. The seal was intact. Fresh. Impossible. The other items were stranger. A blue energy drink I had never seen before. A candy bar with branding that looked familiar but slightly redesigned. 3 flavors of chips that weren't stocked anywhere in the store. Yet, the packaging looked professionally manufactured. Not prototypes. Products. Real products. The man watched me examine them. "You seem concerned. Where did you get these?" "Here." "No." I held up the newspaper. "This isn't possible." He glanced at it. "Oh, right." His tone suggested he'd forgotten something obvious. "You're early." "Early for what?" "For this." I laughed nervously. He didn't. The refrigerators hummed louder behind me. Or maybe I was just noticing them more. I scanned the newspaper. No barcode. The register beeped anyway. A price appeared. $2.49. I froze. The man remained calm. I scanned the milk. Another beep. The chips. The candy. Every item registered normally, like they'd always existed. The receipt printer rattled. A long strip of paper emerged. I handed it to him automatically, then glanced down. The timestamp read, June 16th, 3:24 a.m. Tomorrow. I checked the register clock. June 15th, 3:24 a.m. My pulse quickened. The man folded the receipt and slipped it into his pocket. Machine's getting ahead of itself, he said. I stared at him. What is happening? He considered the question, then answered carefully. Nothing unusual. Those items don't exist. They do. They don't exist yet. That's different. I didn't know how to respond. He rested one hand on the basket. You think time is a line. The radio crackled. A news bulletin interrupted the talk show. A calm voice announced that a delivery truck had overturned on the highway east of town. I glanced outside. Rain continued falling. The roads were empty. No sirens. No alerts on my phone. The bulletin ended. Normal programming resumed. The man looked toward the radio. About 15 minutes early. My throat felt dry. What? You'll hear it again. The automatic doors remained closed. No customers entered. No cars passed. The store suddenly felt sealed off from the rest of the world. I looked back at the clock. 3:25, then 3:27. I blinked. The second hand jumped forward. Skipped. Recovered. The missing minute left no trace. The man noticed me watching. Sometimes it folds badly around here. Around here. Places like this. What places? He gestured vaguely. Night stores. Waiting rooms. Airports. Empty diners. I wished he would stop speaking so calmly. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, as though he'd explained this many times. The radio crackled again. The same traffic bulletin played, word for word. The same overturned truck. The same road. The same voice. My skin prickled. The man nodded. See. I grabbed my phone. No alerts. No notifications. Nothing. Then, 14 minutes later, my phone vibrated. Traffic warning. Overturned truck. Same location. Same details. Exactly as the radio had described. I looked up. The man was watching me. You've done this before, I said. A few times. Who are you? He thought for a moment, then shook his head. Wrong question. What should I be asking? His expression changed slightly. For the first time, he looked uneasy. Not scared. Regretful. The difference bothered me more. You should ask how long you've been here. I stared at him. I've worked here 3 years. No. He looked toward the clock. Here. The refrigerators hummed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I suddenly became aware of how little the store ever changed. Same music. Same smells. Same customers. Night after night. Like a photograph pretending to be a place. The man picked up his basket. I need to go. I stepped around the counter. No. His eyes widened slightly. Not in surprise. Recognition. As though I'd done exactly what he expected. You already asked me not to leave. The words hit me like ice water. What? Last time. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. He sighed. Doesn't matter. The doors slid open behind him. Rain drifted in cold sheets beyond the glass. I looked down. His receipt remained visible in his jacket pocket. The timestamp had changed. June 17th. Not June 16th. Another day ahead. When I looked up, he was gone. No footsteps. No departing car. Nothing. Just darkness outside. I rushed to the door. The parking lot stood empty beneath the rain. The man had vanished. I returned to the register trembling. The basket was gone. The receipt record remained. Every item still listed. Every timestamp still wrong. I spent the rest of the shift watching clocks. Watching doors. watching reflections. At 5:12 a.m., the radio announced a power outage downtown. At 5:29, the outage happened. At 5:41, a customer complained about a delayed train. At 5:54, the train was delayed. Every prediction arrived before the event itself. By sunrise, I felt exhausted. The morning clerk arrived, or at least I thought she did. For a moment, she looked unfamiliar. Not different exactly, just slightly misaligned, like someone remembering her from memory instead of reality. She smiled. Long night. Yeah. She frowned. First one. I laughed uncertainly. What? Your first shift. I stared at her. I've worked here 3 years. Her expression became confused. No. She glanced toward the employee board. Your name was added yesterday. Cold spread through my chest. I turned toward the wall. Employee schedules hung beside the office door. My name appeared. Start date, June 16th. Tomorrow. I stepped closer. Beneath my name was an employee photo. Mine, but not quite. The smile was wrong. The eyes looked tired, older, as if the picture had been taken after years I hadn't lived yet. Behind me, the register printer suddenly rattled. A fresh receipt emerged. No transaction. No customer. Just paper. My hands shook as I tore it free. One item. One timestamp. June 16th. 3:24 a.m. The exact moment the man had entered. Beneath it was a message. Thank you for shopping. See you tomorrow. Then, after a long blank space, employee replacement complete.